I stood in the back of the venue holding a small wooden box, watching my son laugh with his new in-laws near the gift table. Outside, snow was falling in the parking lot. Inside, the air smelled like roses and expensive catering. Everyone was dressed well. Everyone looked warm. I wasn't. The box in my hand was plain. Unvarnished wood. No ribbon. Just a small brass latch and a single key inside. I'd wrapped it in brown paper that morning because I didn't have anything fancier. I watched my son pick it up from the table, turn it over once, and set it back down without opening it. He said something to his new father-in-law. They both smiled. Not cruel, just polite. The kind of smile you give when you're trying not to look disappointed. I didn't know it yet, but that moment would be the last time I'd feel obligated to explain myself to him. My name is Robert. I'm 63 years old. I've been a father for 32 years, and for most of that time, I thought being a good parent meant showing up, paying for things, handling problems quietly so your kids didn't have to. I was right about some of that. Wrong about the rest. My son Eric is my only child. His mother passed away when he was 7. Cancer. It was fast and it was terrible. And when it was over, it was just the two of us, Doc. I didn't remarry. I didn't date much. I worked. I cooked. I drove him to school and practices and birthday parties. I saved what I could. I made sure he had what he needed and most of what he wanted. I wasn't perfect. I didn't talk about feelings the way other parents did. I didn't hug him every day or tell him I loved him out loud all the time. But I was there, every single day, and I thought that counted for something. I thought consistency was a language he'd understand eventually. When Eric was young, he used to ask me why I worked so much. I managed apartment buildings, fixed broken pipes, dealt with tenant complaints, collected rent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I'd come home late sometimes, smelling like paint or drywall dust, and he'd be at the kitchen table doing homework. He'd look up and ask, "Why do you always have to work, Dad?" I'd tell him, "So you don't have to worry about anything except school." He'd nod and go back to his homework. I thought he understood. But understanding and appreciating are different things. When he went to college, I paid for it, not with loans, with money I'd been saving since he was born. I didn't tell him how much. I just told him not to worry about it. He didn't ask questions. He just said thank you once, quickly, and then started talking about his classes and his roommate and his plans. I didn't need a big thank you. I just wanted him to know he was free. Free to study whatever he wanted. Free to make mistakes. Free to figure out who he was without the weight of debt hanging over him. I'd carried weight my whole life. I didn't want him to. When he graduated and wanted to move to a bigger city for work, I helped him with the deposit on his apartment. When his car broke down 2 years later, I bought him a used one outright. Not new, but reliable. The kind of car that wouldn't leave him stranded. When he called to thank me, he sounded distracted. He was at work. He said, "You didn't have to do that, Dad." Asterisk, I said. I know. He said, "I'll pay you back." I said, "Don't worry about it." He never mentioned it again. I told myself it didn't matter. That's what parents do. You give because you can, because you want to, not because you expect anything back. But somewhere along the way, the giving stopped feeling like love and started feeling like obligation, like something expected, like something I'd always do, so why acknowledge it? Asterisk, when he got engaged last year, I was happy for him. Lauren seemed nice, polite. She came from money, which I didn't hold against her. Her parents were successful. They had a big house. They took vacations. They talked about investments and opportunities. Eric started talking like them. He'd call me and mention things in passing. Lauren's dad says the real estate market is shifting. Her parents are helping us look at neighborhoods. They're talking about setting up a trust. I'd listen. I'd ask questions. But I noticed he never asked me about real estate. Never asked my opinion on markets or properties or investments. Asterisk? I'd been managing properties for 40 years. But to him, I was just his dad, the guy who fixed toilets and painted apartments. When they started planning the wedding, Eric called me on a Tuesday night. It was November, already cold. I was sitting in my living room with the heat on low, trying to keep the gas bill down. "Hey, Dad, so we're planning the wedding. Lauren's parents want to handle most of it. They're really excited. They want to do something big." "That's generous of them," I said. "Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know you don't have to worry about contributing or anything. I know you've already done a lot for me. I don't want you to feel pressured." I sat there holding the phone, looking at the dark window. Snow was starting to fall outside. "Okay," I said. "You're not upset, are you?" "No, because if you want to help with something small, you can. I just don't want you to feel like you have to compete with her parents or anything." Compete. That word sat with me for a long time. I'm not competing with anyone, Eric. I know. I just mean, you know what I mean. I did know. I knew exactly what he meant. He meant I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the kind of money that impresses people. And he was right. I didn't, but I had something else. I just wasn't sure he'd recognize it anymore. The wedding was planned for January. A winter ceremony. Lauren wanted it that way. She said winter weddings were elegant. Her parents paid for the venue, the flowers, the photographer, the open bar, everything. I wasn't asked to contribute. I wasn't consulted about the guest list or the schedule or the seating chart. I received an invitation in the mail like everyone else. Formal, printed on thick paper. My name was spelled correctly. That was it. IRSVPD. Yes, the week before the wedding, I went to my storage unit. I kept a small unit on the edge of town where I stored things I didn't have room for in my house. Old furniture, tax documents, my wife's things that Eric hadn't wanted to keep, but I couldn't throw away, and a wooden box. I'd bought the box 15 years ago at an estate sale. Plain wood. Simple latch. It reminded me of something my own father would have owned. Practical. Unadorned. Built to last. I'd kept it empty all these years, waiting for the right moment to use it. This was the moment. I placed the key inside. A single brass key on a plain ring. No label. No explanation. I wrapped the box in brown paper and tied it with twine dot. It looked humble. Almost poor. That was the point. I arrived at the wedding venue early. The parking lot was already half full. Snow covered the cars and the ground. The sky was gray. The kind of gray that makes everything look cold and distant. Inside, the venue was beautiful. High ceilings, chandeliers, tables covered in white linen. Everything looked expensive because it was. I stood near the entrance in my coat, holding the box. A coordinator finally noticed me and checked my name off a list. "You're at table 9, she said, not looking up. "Where's that?" I asked Dot. She pointed toward the back of the room. "Near the kitchen. Family seating is up front, but we ran out of space." I looked toward the front. I saw tables marked with reserved signs. Tables for Lauren's family. Tables for the wedding party. Table 9 was not near any of them. I nodded. I didn't argue. I walked to table 9 and sat down. The table was half empty. A couple arrived a few minutes later. They introduced themselves as friends of Lauren's parents. They were polite. They asked what I did for a living. Asterisk, I told them I worked in property management. The man nodded. Oh, like apartment rentals? Yes. That's steady work, he said in a tone that meant it wasn't impressive work. His wife smiled and changed the subject. I sat there listening to them talk about their vacation to Italy, about their daughter's internship, about the housing market in their neighborhood. I didn't contribute much. I just nodded when it seemed appropriate. The ceremony started. I watched from my seat at table 9. Eric looked happy. Lauren looked beautiful. Her father walked her down the aisle. The music was elegant. The vows were personalized. Everyone clapped at the right moments. I clapped too. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, when it was over, everyone moved to the reception area. I stood and walked toward the gift table. It was set up near the entrance, decorated with white flowers and a silk tablecloth. I pulled the box from my coat pocket and placed it carefully on the table. It looked small next to the other gifts. There were large envelopes, silver-wrapped boxes with elaborate bows, gift bags stuffed with tissue paper. My brown paper package looked like something someone forgot to finish wrapping. I stepped back and looked at it for a moment. Then I walked back to table 9. Dinner was served. Salad, steak, roasted vegetables. Everything was plated beautifully. I ate slowly. The couple at my table talked to each other mostly. I was fine with that. I watched Eric and Lauren at the head table. They were laughing. They looked relaxed, happy. I was glad. After dinner, Lauren's father stood to give a toast. He talked about family, about legacy, about building something together, about giving your children the foundation they need to succeed. Everyone clapped. No one asked me to speak. I hadn't expected them to, but I noticed the absence anyway. Later, I saw Eric walk over to the gift table with Lauren and her father. They were laughing about something. Eric picked up a few envelopes, looked inside, smiled. He picked up a large box, shook it lightly, set it down. Then he picked up my box. He turned it over, looked at the brown paper, looked at me across the room. I didn't move. He smiled. A polite smile. The kind you give when you're trying not to look confused. He said something to Lauren. She glanced at the box, then at me, then back at the other gifts. Her father leaned in, looked at the box, looked at me. I saw the assessment in his face. The quiet conclusion. Eric set the box back down. He didn't open it. They moved on to the next gift. I stayed for another hour. I watched the first dance. I watched them cut the cake. I watched people take photos and hug and congratulate the happy couple. When I left, the box was still sitting on the gift table, unopened. I drove home through empty streets. The roads were slick with snow. My wipers scraped across the windshield in a steady rhythm. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I sat in the car for a while, engine off, heat fading. I thought about the box, about the key inside, about what it represented. I thought about table 9. I thought about the word compete. Then I went inside, made tea, and sat in the quiet. I didn't hear from Eric for 2 weeks. When he finally called, it was a Sunday afternoon. I was reading the paper. The house was cold. I'd turned the heat down to save money, even though I didn't really need to anymore. Old habits. Hey, Dad. Hey, just wanted to check in. We're back from the honeymoon. Maldives. It was incredible. That's good. Yeah, Lauren's parents surprised us with the upgrade. First-class flights, overwater bungalow, the whole thing. That's generous. Yeah, they're really generous. I didn't say anything. So anyway, we've been opening gifts. We got some really nice stuff. Lauren's aunt got us this insane espresso machine. My buddy from college got us a kitchen set that's probably worth more than my first car. He laughed. I waited. We opened yours too. Okay, the box with the key. Right. So, what's it for? You'll figure it out, I said. He laughed again. Not meanly, just casually. Like it was a quirky dad joke he didn't quite get. Come on, Dad, just tell me. Is it symbolic? Like a family heirloom thing? No. Then what does it open? There should be an envelope in the box. There was a pause. I heard rustling. Paper moving. There's no envelope, Dad. Just the key. I frowned. Check again. I'm looking at it right now. Brown paper wrapping. Wooden box. One key. No envelope. Asterisk, I closed my eyes. I'd forgotten to include the envelope. I'd been so focused on the key, on the symbolism, that I'd forgotten the practical part. Dad, you'll get a letter in the mail, I said. In a few days. Why can't you just tell me now? Because I want you to read it, not hear it. He sighed. Okay, fine, whatever. It's just kind of weird, you know? Everyone else's gifts made sense. I know. Lauren's parents keep asking what it is. I don't know what to tell them. Tell them it's personal. Yeah, but, Eric, you'll get the letter. And you'll understand? Okay, sure. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone. I thought about his voice, the mild embarrassment in it. The confusion got the quiet assumption that I'd given him something small because that's all I had to give. Mailed the letter the next day. It was short, straightforward, no sentimentality. Asterisk. Asterisk, it explained that 5 years ago, when he graduated from college, I'd bought a property. A small house in a decent neighborhood about 20 minutes from where he lived now. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. Small yard. Nothing fancy. I'd bought it outright with money I'd been saving for decades. Money from side jobs and careful budgeting, and not taking vacations or buying new cars or spending on anything I didn't absolutely need. The house had been renting out since I bought it. The rent covered the property taxes and maintenance. Last year, I'd paid off the remaining amount I'd borrowed from my retirement account. The house was now free and clear. The deed was in his name. Had been since the day I bought it. The key opened the front door. The letter included the address, the attorney's contact information, and copies of the deed. I mailed it on Monday. Eric called me on Thursday. Dad, his voice was different, quieter, tighter. Did you get the letter? I asked. Yeah. Silence. You bought me a house? Yes, 5 years ago? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see what you'd do with the key, and no explanation. More silence. I don't understand. I gave you something valuable in plain packaging, I said. I wanted to see if you'd ask questions. If you'd trust that I wouldn't show up to your wedding with something meaningless. Dad, I didn't mean. I know what you meant. You thought it was symbolic, or sentimental, or cheap. You set it down without opening it, because it didn't look important. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's honest. He didn't respond. Lauren's father is going to feel like an idiot, he said finally. Why? Because he made this whole thing about giving us a down payment for a house. 20% down, big ceremony. Handed us the check in front of everyone at the rehearsal dinner. And you already gave us a whole house. 5 years ago. I didn't do it to compete with him. I know. But still, do you understand what the key was, Eric? Yeah, it was a house key. No, I said. It was a test. Silence. A test of what? Of whether you'd see past the surface. Of whether you'd ask. Of whether you'd consider that maybe your dad, who's worked in property for 40 years, might know something about real estate, might have something valuable to offer, even if it didn't come in a silver box with a bow. His breathing changed. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just clear now. Clear about what? About where I stand? About how you see me? About what you value? That's not fair. I love you. I know you do. But love and respect are different things. He tried to argue. He said he'd been busy. He said the wedding was overwhelming. He said he didn't mean anything by it. He said he appreciated everything I'd ever done. I told him. I believed him. But I also told him I was done explaining myself. The house is his. The deed is filed. He can live in it, sell it, rent it out. Whatever he wants. But I'm not attending anymore. Events where I'm seated at table. 9. I'm not showing up to family gatherings. Where I'm treated like an afterthought. I'm not pretending it doesn't hurt when people assess my worth by the size of my gift wrap. Eric and Lauren moved into the house in March. I know because he sent me a text. A photo of the front door with the key in the lock. He wrote, "Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Can we talk?" I didn't respond right away. I sat with it for a few days. Then I wrote back, "I'm glad you have it. Take care of it." That was all. He called twice after that. I didn't answer. He left voicemails. Long ones. Apologizing. Explaining. Asking to meet for coffee. I deleted them, not because I'm angry, but because I don't need his guilt. I don't need him to make it right. I needed him to see me. And he didn't. Not until it was documented. Not until it was spelled out in legal paperwork. That tells me everything I need to know. I drive past the house sometimes. I take the long way home from the grocery store just to see it. The lights are on most evenings. Eric's car is in the driveway. Sometimes I see Lauren in the window, moving around the kitchen. It looks like a home. I'm glad. But I don't stop. I don't knock on the door. I don't call ahead to visit. I gave them the house. I didn't give them access to me. Those are two different things. Spring came. The snow melted. The streets cleared. Everything turned green again. Eric sent me a card for Father's Day. It was long, handwritten. He thanked me. He apologized. He said he understood now. He said he was ashamed of how he'd acted. He said he wanted to do better. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer and went about my day. I believe him. I believe he's sorry. But sorry doesn't undo 32 years of being overlooked, of being dismissed, of being treated like I had nothing valuable to offer, because I didn't talk about it. I think about that wedding a lot, the snow in the parking lot, the chandeliers, the white linen, the gift table covered in expensive boxes. And my small wooden box sitting in the middle, plain and unnoticed. I think about Eric picking it up, turning it over, setting it back down. I think about the smile he gave me, polite, distant, embarrassed. I think about table 9. I don't regret what I did. I gave my son something valuable, and I wrapped it in humility. I wanted to see if he'd look past the wrapping, if he'd ask questions, if he'd trust me. He didn't. And that taught me more than any conversation ever could. Taught me that I'd been invisible for a long time. Not because I was absent, but because I was quiet. I thought quiet strength was enough. I thought consistency spoke for itself. I was wrong. Silence doesn't make you noble. It makes you easy to overlook. And I'd been overlooked for years. By my son, by his new family, by everyone who assumed that because I didn't make a show of my sacrifices, they didn't exist. The house was never about revenge. It was never about proving I was better than Lauren's parents. It was about giving Eric something real, something permanent, something that couldn't be dismissed once he finally saw it. And he did see it. But I'll never forget how long it took. I'll never forget the way he set that box down without opening it. I'll Never forget being seated at table 9. Wow. Strangers sat with my family. Some things you forgive. Some things you just accept. I accept that my son loves me. But I also accept that he didn't value me until I forced him to see it on paper. I accept that I'll always be the quiet one, the one who doesn't demand attention, the one who does things without fanfare. But I also accept that I don't owe anyone an explanation. Any more. The key was enough. The house was enough. And if that wasn't obvious from the beginning, then maybe the lesson was worth more than the gift. I'm 63 years old. I've spent most of my life giving, quietly, consistently, without asking for credit. Done with that now. Not because I'm bitter, but because I finally understand that giving without being seen doesn't make you selfless. It just makes you invisible. I'm not invisible anymore, not because I demanded recognition, but because I stopped waiting for it. The snow has melted. The key has turned. The door has opened. And I know exactly what I gave, even if it took a wooden box and a lawyer's letter to make it visible. I don't need Eric's gratitude. I don't need his apology. I just needed him to understand. And now, in the quiet clarity of this spring and every season that follows, I know exactly what I'm worth. Not in what I give, but in what I choose to keep. My dignity, my self-respect, my understanding that love without acknowledgement isn't partnership. It's servitude. I'm done serving people who don't see me. The house stands. The deed is filed. The gift is given. But I'm keeping the rest of myself to myself. And that finally feels like enough.